Hi, my name's Emily and I'm hoping to give you a bit of a taste today into sociology at HNC. Just before we get started, sociology is the study of society. So we look at how an individual's experience of the social world is shaped by factors such as their age, their gender, their social class and their ethnicity. And we look at areas in society like education, media, culture and crime. So today's taster is going to be about why we behave the way that we do. And we're interested in looking at why do people follow the rules. Now, the rules are always changing, the laws are changing, but people tend to adapt pretty quickly. So during COVID, the rules changed on how to behave in a supermarket, and most people just adapted straight away. So we're really interested in why was that? Is it because you are forced to follow the rules, or is it because you make a conscious decision? So different theories will have different views on that. We're also interested in who shapes our identity. You might think that you have a lot of free will. You decide how you behave, what you wear, how you speak to others, who your friends are. But some theories would argue that that is actually controlled by wider institutions in society. So that's the issue and debate that we're going to look at today. So there are two explanations of behaviour, and these are really the fundamentals of sociology. So it's really important that we look at these today to give you a bit of an understanding of them. So the first one is a structural approach, and that argues that structures in society, like the ones on here, they shape your behaviour directly. So I'll give you an example. Education tells you how to behave, it tells you to follow the rules to wear a uniform, and you follow those rules. So it is directly shaping your behaviour with very little free will on your part. The next one, action approaches, they actually say that the individual is more important in shaping their own behaviour. So it looks at the power that individuals have to exercise their free will. So if we looked at the media, for example, the man here with the camera, he has the ability to shape the media because he can choose to upload something. So somebody who puts a news story on social media or puts a picture on social media, we might refer to them as a citizen journalist because they are shaping the media themselves. The next one, not all students follow the rules. So whilst the structural approaches would say that the structure impacts the individual, action approaches would say that the individual actually shapes the structure. So if a student doesn't follow the rules, then they are impacting the structure themselves. Next one is religion. So we know that there's lots of different religions in society. People can change religions over time and they can choose which religion they conform to, and that is an example of them exercising their free will. Culture. The idea here is that you pick and mix your culture. You can decide what norms, behaviours, values you conform to. We have subcultures in society as well, and that's an example of people exercising their free will. And finally, the family. There is not just one type of family. People change the family type that they're in throughout their lifetime, and that's again an example of them deciding their own life. Okay, so I'm going to give you a scenario now. You've just been invited to a job interview and it's tomorrow, so there's really some important questions that I want you to think about. So some questions on here. How would you behave in that job interview? What would you wear? How would you speak? And how would you want to come across? So if you could just pause the video now and just have a think about these questions. Okay, so I'm hoping that you've had a chance to think about those questions. Now, a lot of people's answers on these questions would be quite similar, so I'm going to have a guess at what you had in your mind. So I'm guessing that you're going to want to behave professionally. I'm guessing that you're going to want to wear something that is seen as quite professional, so workwear. You're probably not going to speak to the interviewer as you would speak to your friends, and you would want to come across very professional and responsible in that job interview. Okay, so I'm going to give you two different ways in which theories would look at this behaviour and the choices that you've just made there. Okay, so one way in which we could explain the behaviour options that you've chosen in the job interview is through an action theorist called Goffman, who's one of my favourite theorists, and he uses the idea of what he calls the dramaturgical model, which is the idea that your behaviour is like a drama performance, like as if you were in the theatre. So on your front stage you are putting on a performance to audience members and you want to come across a certain way. So in your job interview you're probably going to use props. So these are things like the language that you use and the clothes that you wear. Those are all props that help you with your performance, and this is called impression management, where you try to manage the impression that others have of you. In contrast to that, you've got your backstage. This is probably when you're with the people that you feel most confident with and comfortable with, and you're at home, you don't need as many props, you're not trying to come across a certain way, it's less scripted. So Goffman argues that when you're on your front stage, you are putting on that performance, you have the ability to control how others see you. In contrast to this then, we have the structural perspective. So remember, they argue that the institutions shape your behaviour, so actually you have less free will than you thought. So structural theorists would argue that individuals conform to society's norms and values. So the fact that everybody is probably going to turn up in workwear and dress and act professionally suggests that we have less free will than we thought. It's likely that the style of dress, language and behaviour of all the interviewees will be very similar. So they would say that this shows that everyone is socialised to behave a certain way, and actually you don't have as much free will as you think. So one of the things that we'll discuss in our lessons is how much free will do we actually have? I'll just give you a final scenario just to make sure that you've understood this concept. So if we took social media as an example, I'm sure most of you use social media. How do you think action theorists would explain social media, and how do you think structural perspectives would explain social media? Okay, so action theorists would argue that individuals control the media. Remember what I said at the start, you can upload content and you can share content, you can interact with it. So they would say that individuals have a lot of control over the contents of social media. On the other hand, structural perspectives would argue that actually it's the people who own the media who control what we see, what we view and what we think. So they would argue there's a lot less free will within that. Okay. So you might want to have a think about how this all applies to your identity. So there's some things on here that we talked about already, such as how you speak, how you dress. You might think about the job that you want to go into, your interests and your hobbies, your political views, and you can start to have a think about how much free will you actually have in forming these ideas and beliefs. Okay, so finally, let's just conclude and look back at the questions that we considered at the start. Hopefully that's given you a really interesting insight into some of the things that we study in sociology, and it's got you thinking about how your identity is shaped. So I want to know, what do you think? How much free will do you have in the decisions that you make in society? Thank you very much for watching, and we hope to see you soon. Remember, if you want any more information, you can look at the website or come and see us on one of our open days. Thank you.